The Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms has long divided Americans, shaping laws and fueling heated debates. The Supreme Court's recent unanimous decision in the Smith & Wesson Brands case marks a historic turning point. A 9-0 ruling on gun rights is unprecedented, sending a powerful message about the legal protections for firearms manufacturers. This decision reaffirms federal law, shifting the ground for future gun control battles and setting a formidable precedent. For gun rights advocates, it's a major victory. For gun control supporters, a significant setback. We'll explore the origins, legal reasoning, and far-reaching implications of this landmark ruling. The case began when gun control groups and the Mexican government sued Smith & Wesson and other gun makers, claiming their marketing and distribution practices enabled illegal trafficking and violence. Rather than alleging defective products, the plaintiffs argued the company's business models created a foreseeable risk of criminal misuse. This novel, legal theory aimed to bypass existing federal protections and hold manufacturers responsible for gun violence. The case became a pivotal test of whether courts could redefine the boundaries of corporate responsibility in the firearms industry. At the heart of this legal battle lies a controversial federal law, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, or PLCAA, which was enacted by Congress in 2005. This legislation was designed to address a growing wave of lawsuits that targeted gun manufacturers and dealers, holding them responsible for crimes committed with firearms they produced or sold. Lawmakers argued that without such protection, the firearms industry could be crippled by costly litigation, even when manufacturers and sellers had followed all applicable laws. The PLCAA acts as a legal shield, making it extremely difficult for victims of gun violence or their families to sue gun makers simply because their products were used in a crime. The law was intended to ensure that lawful businesses would not be held liable for the independent actions of criminals, much like car manufacturers aren't sued for accidents caused by reckless drivers. However, the PLCAA does not provide absolute immunity. There are important exceptions built into the law. For example, gun manufacturers and sellers can still be held accountable if they knowingly violate state or federal laws in the sale or marketing of firearms, or if they produce defective products that cause harm. These exceptions are narrow, but they leave the door open for certain types of lawsuits. What the PLCAA does bar, in clear terms, are lawsuits that seek to blame gun makers for the criminal acts of third parties. Cases where the only claim is that a legally sold firearm was later misused. This principle, now enshrined in federal law, reflects a broader debate about responsibility and accountability in American society. The Smith & Wesson case put these legal boundaries to the test. Plaintiffs argued that the company's marketing practices were so reckless that they should fall outside the PLCAA's protections, raising the question of whether certain business behaviors could pierce the industry's legal shield. The outcome of the case depended on how the courts would interpret the exceptions written into the PLCAA, whether they would be read narrowly, preserving the law's strong protections, or more broadly, allowing for new types of claims against gun makers. In the end, the precise language of the PLCAA became the central battleground, with both sides arguing over its meaning and intent. A debate that continues to shape the legal landscape for the firearms industry today. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision is striking, especially on such a divisive issue. The justices agreed the plaintiffs' claims didn't fit any PLCAA exceptions, and that Congress intended to block exactly this type of lawsuit. Their ruling wasn't about personal views on gun rights, but about faithfully interpreting the law as written. The court found the PLCAA's language unambiguous, leaving no room for creative legal arguments. All 9 justices, regardless of ideology, saw the case as a straightforward matter of statutory interpretation. The clarity of the law fostered rare consensus, transcending political divides. This case became less about gun politics, and more about the rules of reading and applying federal statutes. The ruling's power lies in its cross-ideological unity. Justice Elena Kagan, a liberal, wrote the majority opinion, joined by both liberal and conservative justices. Their agreement shows the decision was based on law, not politics. Separate concurring opinions from Justices Jackson and Thomas, representing opposite ends of the spectrum, reinforced the core consensus. A unanimous decision creates a durable precedent, signaling to lower courts and litigants that the PLCAA's protections are settled law. Future lawsuits attempting to hold gun makers liable for criminal misuse are now legally doomed to fail. The court's unity delivers a clear, authoritative message to the nation. The Supreme Court's recent decision marks a pivotal moment in the ongoing debate over gun violence and accountability in America. By ruling in favor of gun manufacturers, the court has effectively ended the legal strategy of holding these companies responsible for crimes committed by third parties using their products. For years, victims and advocacy groups have sought to use the courts as a means to address gun violence, arguing that manufacturers should be liable for negligent marketing or for creating a public nuisance. This decision, however, draws a clear line in the sand. With this new precedent, large-scale lawsuits that attempt to hold gun makers accountable for the actions of others will sharply decline. The legal landscape has shifted, making it much more difficult for plaintiffs to pursue claims based on broad theories of negligence or public harm. The courtroom doors that were once open to these cases are now, for the most part, closed. Importantly, the ruling does not grant gun manufacturers blanket immunity from all lawsuits. They can still be held liable if they produce defective firearms that cause injury, or if they engage in illegal conduct such as knowingly selling guns to prohibited buyers. The court's decision is specific. It blocks lawsuits that seek to blame manufacturers for crimes committed with legally sold, non-defective firearms. This means that while some avenues for legal action remain, the broad approach of targeting gun makers for the societal impact of gun violence is now barred. The responsibility for criminal acts rests with the individuals who commit them, not with the companies that made the weapons. As a result, the focus of gun control efforts must now shift away from the courtroom and toward the legislative arena. Advocates seeking change will need to work with Congress and state legislatures to craft new laws and regulations, rather than relying on litigation to drive reform. The Supreme Court made it clear: changing the rules for gun industry liability is a job for lawmakers, not judges. If society wants different standards for gun manufacturers, it is up to elected officials to enact those changes through the democratic process. In short, the path of litigation as a primary tool for gun control has been decisively blocked. The door to the courts is now closed, and the future of gun policy will be shaped in the halls of government, not in the courtroom. This 9-0 decision is part of a broader trend of Supreme Court unanimity. On the same day, the court issued several other unanimous rulings on major issues, signaling a push for consensus. In a polarized era, these decisions counter the narrative of a deeply divided court. Many cases, including this one, are resolved by clear statutory interpretation rather than ideology. Chief Justice Roberts appears to be steering the court toward narrower, widely agreed rulings to bolster its legitimacy. The justices often find common ground when the law's text is clear, even on contentious topics. This commitment to unity strengthens the court's authority and provides stable guidance for the nation. The Smith & Wesson Brands decision stands as a watershed moment in America's ongoing and often contentious gun debate. This landmark case has not only captured the attention of legal scholars and policymakers, but also ignited passionate discussions among everyday Americans about the future of gun rights and gun control in the United States. By unanimously upholding the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, or PLCAA, the Supreme Court has solidified robust legal protections for gun manufacturers. This decision effectively ends a key legal strategy that gun control advocates have used for years, suing gun makers for crimes committed with their products. The ruling sends a powerful message. The courts are not the venue for changing the rules around gun industry liability. The fact that the ruling was unanimous gives it extraordinary legal and political weight. It sets a precedent that will likely discourage similar lawsuits across the country, making it much harder for future cases to challenge gun manufacturers in court. Legal experts say this level of agreement among the justices is rare, and it signals a strong, unified stance on the issue. With the court stepping back, The debate over whether gun makers should be held liable for gun violence now shifts back to the legislative arena. Here, lawmakers and voters will have to grapple with tough questions about public safety, personal responsibility, and the Second Amendment. The future of gun industry accountability will be shaped not by judges, but by the people and their elected representatives. The judiciary has drawn a clear and unmistakable line. Only Congress has the authority to change these rules. If there is to be any shift in how gun manufacturers are regulated or held accountable, it will have to come through new legislation, not through the courts. For gun rights advocates, this decision is a major victory, reinforcing their belief in the protection of the firearms industry and the Second Amendment. For gun control supporters, it's a clear call to action, a signal that their efforts must now focus on legislative change, building coalitions, and persuading lawmakers to take up their cause. The Supreme Court's decision will shape the contours of America's gun policy debate for years, if not decades to come. As the nation continues to wrestle with the balance between individual rights and public safety, this ruling will remain a defining moment in the story of America's relationship with guns.